Everyday Shenanigans. Hope you all have had a wonderful, safe, cool weekend. As most of you know, Roe versus Wade has been overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. It has been stated that at 16 weeks, a fetus is considered a human being. You are entitled to your interpretation of the said information. I'm going to give you the definition of ensoulment. ensoulment, if you need verification for the spelling. In religion and philosophy, ensoulment is the moment at which a human or other being gains a soul. Some belief systems maintain that a soul is newly created within a developing child and others. Very interesting information. A newly created human being gains a soul. Definition: to endow with the soul. To place, receive, or cherish in the soul. Ensoulment. Very interesting information. Roe versus Wade. How did it come to be that it was overturned by the United States government? I'm going to bring you said information to how this case came to be and where we are today. Roe versus Wade. 410 U.S. 113, 1973, was a landmark decision of the U.S. Supreme Court in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States generally protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion. The decision struck down many federal and state abortion laws and fueled an ongoing debate in the United States about whether or to what extent abortion should be legal. Who should decide the legality of abortion and what the role of moral and religious views in the political sphere should be. It also shaped debate concerning which methods the Supreme Court should use in constitutional adjudication. This case was argued December 13, 1971, the year the Queen was born, re-argued October 11, 1972, and decided January 22nd, 1973. Holding. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides a fundamental right to privacy that protects a pregnant woman's liberty to abort her fetus. This right is not absolute and has to be balanced against the government's interests in protecting women's health and protecting prenatal life. Texas statutes making it a crime to procure an abortion violated this right. This set of information is in Wikipedia if you need verification for the judges that stood on it. I don't have to read all that information. I'm going to give you the basics pertaining to how this case came to be. The case was brought by Norma McCorvey, known by the legal pseudonym Jane Roe, who in 1969 became pregnant with her third child. McCorvey wanted an abortion but lived in Texas where abortion was illegal except when necessary to save the mother's life. Her attorneys Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey filed a lawsuit on her behalf in the U.S. federal court against her local district attorney, Henry Wade, alleging that Texas abortion laws were unconstitutional. A three-judge panel of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas ruled in her favor and declared the relevant Texas abortion statutes unconstitutional. The parties appealed this ruling to the Supreme Court of the United States. On January 22, 1973, the Supreme Court issued a 7-2 decision holding that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides a fundamental right to privacy, which protects a pregnant woman's right to an abortion. But the court also held that the right to abortion is not absolute and must be balanced against the government's interest in protecting women's health and prenatal life. The court resolved these competing interests by announcing a trimester timetable to govern all abortion regulations in the United States. During the first trimester, governments could not regulate abortion at all, except to require that abortions be performed by a licensed physician. During the second trimester, governments could regulate the abortion procedure, but only for the purpose of protecting maternal health and not for protecting fetal life. after viability, which includes the third trimester of pregnancy and the last few weeks of the second trimester. Abortions could be regulated and even prohibited, but only if the laws provide exceptions for the abortions necessary to save the life or health of the mother. The court also classified the right to abortion as fundamental, which requires courts to evaluate challenge abortion laws under the strict scrutiny standard, the most stringent level of judicial review in the United States. The Supreme Court's decision in Roe was among the most controversial in U.S. history. Anti-abortion politicians and activists sought for decades to overrule the decision. Despite criticism of Roe, the Supreme Court reaffirmed its central holding in its 1992 decision, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Although Casey overruled Roe's trimester framework and abandoned Roe's strict scrutiny standard in favor of a more malleable undue burden test, on June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court overruled Roe in Dobbs versus Jackson, Women's Health Organization. As I said, how did it come to this? How in the world did it come to this? All this started with a Norma McCorvey, known as Jane Roe, who became pregnant in 1969. Now you fast forward many moons later, 53, and it's been overturned. As I said, how did it come to be? I'm going to bring you some information pertaining to this new ruling. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to the channel, $BeganG129 Cash App. All super chat stickers are welcome during this live. Thank you all so much for following the Queen. Let's see. We're going to play a little information. I'm going to be bringing you two sources of information. Let's see here. See if I can get it up. Thank you all so much for your patience. Wall Street Journal, source number 1.
Bluetooth connected.
Thank you for joining me, everybody.
1973 decision that established a constitutional right to an abortion in the U.S. Now, decisions on the legality of abortion are left to the states.
This is going to mean that access to abortion will vary dramatically depending on where you live.
While 16 states and the District of Columbia have laws that protect the right to an abortion, 22 states have laws that could ban all or most abortions now that Roe has been reversed, according to the Guttmacher Institute, a policy group that supports abortion rights and tracks national abortion statistics. The organization details a patchwork of laws among these states, including pre-Roe bans, trigger laws, and post-Roe restrictions that will determine the fate of abortion access in the U.S. 9 states have bans on their books that predate Roe v. Wade, which have been unenforceable for the past 5 decades.
Some of them date back to the late 1800s or early 1900s. These could be laws that could be enforced after this decision or as a result of this decision.
States like Arkansas can now revive their pre-Roe bans through official enforcement or by filing court actions. However, not all states with pre-Roe bans are poised to enforce the laws. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and abortion rights groups have filed lawsuits to block the state's 1931 law that makes providing an abortion at any point during pregnancy a felony. A Michigan judge, through a preliminary injunction, said the state can't enforce it.
Whereas others in states like Arizona, for example, I know lawmakers there are anticipating that they could enforce their own pre-Roe ban on abortion.
13 states have passed so-called trigger laws on the condition they would go into effect if the Supreme Court rescinded the constitutional right to abortion.
However, each of these laws are quite different from the other one.
And they can take effect at different times. In Kentucky, Louisiana, and South Dakota, the laws are enforceable immediately. But in Texas, Idaho, and Tennessee, there's a 30-day buffer period between Roe's reversal and when the laws go into effect. In some states, trigger laws can only be implemented after state government officials, such as attorneys general or governors, certify the high court's decision. Some states, including Georgia and Alabama, have sought to set stricter limits on when abortions can be performed during a pregnancy. Georgia's ban on abortion around when cardiac activity can be detected, and Alabama's near total ban have previously been blocked in court because they conflicted with limits set by Roe.
Now the elimination of these federal protections for the procedure and the reversal of the Supreme Court precedent means that it's possible they can be resurrected in some way.
Some states don't have these specific restrictions or protections for abortion currently on the books, and it remains to be seen what actions they will take in the future. Meanwhile, abortion clinics in more liberal states have been preparing for an influx of patients.
They are expanding their hours, adding more staff, adding more days that they are available to accommodate what they expect to be even more patients coming in.
Abortion providers in more restrictive states are also assessing how to support patients who will need to travel outside of the state for the procedure.
Planning and figuring out how they will navigate this different and varying access to abortion across this country will be something that I'm sure will take some time to really nail down and figure out.
Wall Street Journal is the source. What overturning Roe versus Wade means for abortion access in the U.S. So you see there are guidelines, certain states, some states will have a 30-day period, a buffering period. So you need to check your local states if indeed you are faced with the decision of wanting to abort a child, fetus, however you would like to word it. You need to check with your state to see what laws are on the books and your the timeline. I'm going to bring you source number 2 pertaining to this new event. I'm kind of stunned myself. Kind of stunned. Thank you all for joining me. MSNBC is source number 2. It's about a 12-minute video. Inside the Roe decision, why Alito's ruling can't be taken at face value. Thank you for joining me. $31 in a row. Thank you all so much for tuning in.
And also seen as a critic of abortion, did not formally dissent. He upheld this Mississippi law, but he also wrote separately to assert that he doesn't really agree with what this bare 5-vote majority did. Basically, if it weren't for the Trump appointees, Roberts would have stopped this. He says he would have preferred not to overrule Roe entirely and instead operate on, quote, narrower grounds. Of course, this majority does end Roe entirely, and that means it's open season for states to ban abortion in all sorts of ways. The nation's high court ruling also that judges across the country must uphold virtually all abortion regulations. I mentioned this briefly in the top of the program, but I want to show you what this means. Justice Alito writes that, quote, rational basis review will be the appropriate standard for challenges because, again, as he put it, abortion is, quote, not a fundamental constitutional right. So a law regulating abortion is entitled to, quote, a strong presumption of validity. In other words, when these states go forward, not only with the automatic trigger laws and other types of laws that we've described today, but when they go forward with even other far more extreme measures, perhaps trying to ban Plan B and types of contraception, under today's precedent, those types of laws or rules have to be treated as if they're automatically valid. Then the dissenting justices, of course, have their views of all of this. They point out that this could impact taking medication in one's home. They note that some states may compel women to carry to term a fetus with severe physical anomalies, sure to die within a few years of birth, and that without any exceptions for when the woman is the victim of rape or incest, a woman will have to bear her rapist's child, or a young girl her father's. Let's pause right there. This is difficult stuff to talk about and to consider, but all the more difficult for people to face or live through. This is what one of our guests just earlier tonight referred to as law of forced pregnancy, of forced childbirth. Now, the court could have provided any such exceptions in the majority opinion. As written, it really does not seem to. So this is, as the dissent put it, a type of opinion that would uphold, based on what we can tell, states that want to force people to carry their rapist baby to term. That's part of what's in here. Now, Justice Alito asserts that all of this today, this new ruling and this change to law, is required by history, that it has nothing to do with a pro-life stance. Indeed, Alito insists on behalf of the court majority that they are neutral on the issue of abortion. Quote, "Our opinion is not based on any view about if and when prenatal life has rights." Now, this matters. Again, I mentioned if we're going to be a democracy and we're going to deal in facts and self-governance, think about what this court wants everyone to believe today as they exercise power over people's lives and bodies. They are claiming with a straight face in writing it's all a neutral exercise in history that just happens to overlap with what sounds like a personal religious agenda about life or prenatal life, as well as the multi-decade right-wing effort to get these very people on the court. It is hard to believe, in the most diplomatic, nicest way possible, to say it. It's hard to believe that that's true. And by the way, it's certainly not what Justice Alito's fans believe. They think President Bush put him on the court for the same reason Trump put his 3 judges on, that they would be what they were today, ironclad pro-life votes, that they were just saying what they had to say when they talked about precedent at those confirmation hearings. And look no further than Alito's own writing today in this opinion to see some of the tells about why abortion is just different. This is not legal history. This is not external science. This is Justice Alito admitting why he did what he did. Because to distinguish against other also popular rights, he promises this case will be different, meaning the court will not necessarily take out other rights because abortions, quote, destroy potential life. Well, right there, when you just read what they say, that's not neutral. That's a view of life and when it begins and what its value is. The 3 dissenting justices point out that the court does not, quote, act neutrally when it leaves everything up to the states. It's taking sides against women who wish to exercise the right. And, on the other hand, taking sides, quote, for states that want to bar them from doing so. Now, Alito reasons that Roe is not constitutionally protected provision and that other rights would somehow be different, rights that have been accrued over the years.
A historic decision about abortion. In the first 3 months of pregnancy, only the woman and her physician may decide whether she may have an abortion.
The Supreme Court's historic ruling on Monday upholding the legality of abortion but allowing states to impose restrictions.
The court ruled in favor of 2 Texas men who challenged the state law that made homosexual conduct a crime.
It was another historic day at the Supreme Court. Marriage equality is now the law of the land.
Thank you, Nature Made, for seeing that
that was
is a little chaotic.
And that was in June of 15 when that became possible for same-sex marriage. Now, 2022. Interesting. 7 years later. New day. That's why I find it interesting.
And that's true today. Marriage equality is the law of the land. And right now, states cannot imprison people for who they have sex with because they have sex with someone of the same gender or however that's defined. You cannot be imprisoned for that in America, but that's only because of the case you just heard those newscasters refer to, that Texas case. But now those rights are also in danger here. They're at risk. And Alito says it's unfounded to fear that anything could happen to those rights. Quote, unfounded, that somehow is a leap. He says the line is now at abortion. But the justices will decide cases as they come before the court. And when you start removing fundamental rights or a right to privacy or a right to certain personal, intimate decisions, well, this is how the law works. This is how they teach it in law school. You take out a bunch of the foundations, the other stuff can fall. The dissenting justices deal with this as well today. And again, we think you should have a firm understanding of the details and the clash, because they note that the lone rationale for what the majority does, saying abortion's not, quote, deeply rooted in history, the same could be said of most of the rights the majority claims it's not tampering with. So contrary to what Alito says, it actually seems perhaps the fear is founded. One justice already made it known that is what he wants to do. Justice Clarence Thomas used today's decision, and you think about how impactful this is, how worried people are, how affected people are, and he just went completely off the books to talk about what else he thinks should be overruled, saying we should reconsider the court having rights to those rulings you just heard in those newscasts: contraception, same-sex marriage, and even same-sex intercourse. You have a Supreme Court justice today in this opinion about Roe going out of his way to bring up something nobody asked for, but apparently what he wants to do, and he's telling the world, he wants to be able to allow states to imprison people for the sex they have. So legally, we're going back 50 years today. Some of what they're talking about goes back 100, 150 years. Here's another quote. Until the mid-20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to contraceptives. The dissent is pointing this out again. This is why Alito's logic is so concerning to so many. And the court's dissenters, that's Sotomayor, Kagan, and Breyer, say, quote, either the majority, Alito and co., either they don't really believe their own reasoning, or all rights that have no history stretching back to the mid-19th century are now insecure, are now in danger. This is what the court is doing with its powers. And everything we just went through has to do with rights, with how the Supreme Court, which is the final word in our system, not the first or the second, but the final, how they deal with rights. Then you have the sexism in how these laws are written and who's on the court upholding them. The dissenting justices come at this quite clearly. They note that when we talk about the, quote, people who ratified the 14th Amendment, which the justices do, well, they weren't just people thinking about those rights, they were all men.
Yes.
They explained the male ratifiers were not perfectly attuned to the importance of reproductive rights for women's liberty or for their capacity to participate as equal members of our nation. That is how Supreme Court justices sound when they sound sarcastic. Obviously, issues are as serious as a heart attack, as serious as people's lives. And the point they're making is, if you buy this Justice Alito claim that everything has to be decided basically by the standards of this period of history, if you buy that, then you're only going to be taking the antiquated views of the men who were in charge then at a time when women did not have full legal and political rights. You might think it'd be controversial to admit out loud that that's your endpoint. It'd be like describing civil and voting rights laws during the time of slavery and saying, let's look only to the slaveholder's mindset. It is the gender version of that, and it is in an opinion today. Now, women do not get pregnant on their own. This opinion forces women nationwide to carry what will be, according to their personal choice, for some of them, an unwanted situation to term. And there's no provision for any extra responsibility or legal obligation for the men who are part of that, who are doing the impregnating.
Right.
Which brings us to someone who was replaced when she passed by Donald Trump's appointment process, the late Justice Ginsburg, discussing that women with means who may travel in this type of ruling would still have some options, some still burdened by the state, still burdened by the government, still burdened by male legislators, that they would have some options to hopefully for them find legal and safe abortions, which means in a very real sense, these types of laws do what is not supposed to be done. They discriminate on the basis of both gender and class, with poor women the most impacted.
Take the worst case. Suppose Roe v. Wade is overruled. Who will be affected? The only women who are genuinely affected by restrictive abortion laws are poor women, voiceless women, and that's a very sorry situation.
MSNBC is the source. That was the late Ginsburg speaking. Let's read some of the comments. Before I go on, both sources Wall Street Journal was number one. Number two that I just played is MSNBC, and Ginsburg, the late Judge Ginsburg, speaking here in a public forum. All types of women have had abortions. Let's go there. And you have people, women who have the means to possibly raise a child, but she doesn't want the child. No different than someone that was working class, middle class, young girl, whichever the situation. Everybody's situation is different. And at the time, the government said it was your choice to have the abortion. And that's they're saying in this commentary, if you have the means, you could go out of state or out of area to get it done if you were going past the limit that was the statute in your state. And I remember a time about 30 years ago that I believe if you went past month 4 or 5, you'd have to go to Atlanta, Georgia to get an abortion. You couldn't get it done. You couldn't have one legally done here in Tennessee. So what is to become of this overturn? I think back to a time when women had them done in back rooms. And that has been going on that went on for hundreds of years. And all types of women had them done. A coat hanger was used, from my understanding. And when you think about that, it's vile. And you could have harmed yourself and been killed in getting it done, because you're having it done by a non-professional, not a doctor. So how do you know what you're doing up in there? Woman's private area, trying to abort a baby. And as I said, the information I got on Google was 16 weeks, which is roughly 4 months. The fetus has been considered having a soul. You're entitled to your interpretation, because in the end, this is all about one's opinion of when a fetus is thriving, breathing, with no what? Pain, suffering. With a 4-month-old, a 4-month-old in the womb, would he or she know suffering? We don't know because we're not in there. It's very dicey subject matter. And I'm in the Bible Belt. For those of you who know, I live here in East Tennessee. And yes, this is a good old boy state, like so many states in America, southern states. Most laws have been made in this country. Majority of them, I'm going to say most, 10 out of 10 were made by men. From the moment that somebody set foot here on land that was already had inhabitants. And then you brought the African people here, used them as slaves. Yeah, I'm gonna go there because it's just the truth. In a land that wasn't yours. And you dictated from day one the rules of what was supposed to be here in America. How to walk, how to talk, how to act, who could date who could marry whom. And that's the sick part of the story. Women never had rights. Even white women had no rights. Let's keep this 100. White women never had any rights, white Europeans. You were free to roam and go wherever you wanted, do whatever you wanted to do, but you still had no rights to do basic things that men were allowed to do, such as vote. A white woman couldn't vote many moons ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? So all of these laws have been made by men, such as the products we use, made by men. That's the thing. Wouldn't doubt that a man made a sanitary napkin. You see what I'm saying? So it's a valid point he made. That most of the rules they are made by men, sadly. And I feel it's your choice if you want to have abortion. That is your choice. I have nothing to do with that. And that's an argument I don't even argue, because I'm not in your mind. I'm not in your body. And as he said, it's a two-way street. It takes two to tango. But the burden is on the woman, because she is the one who has to carry the fetus if she chooses to. A man just supplies the sperm. That's it. He gets off scot-free. No obligations, nothing. Hey, I'm pregnant. Oh, really? Okay. He's disinterested, falls off, walks away. Now a woman's left to carry the burden. And yes, we know that all parties are to be responsible for their bodies, but we live in the real world. As I said, hundreds of years later, we have contraceptives. Now people still don't use them. That is their choice. They don't want to use a condom, IUD, birth control, the shot, whichsoever. But that's your best bet if you don't want to end up pregnant as a female or to abstain. Same for the man. Your best bet is to abstain or use a condom. But we also know that condoms are not foolproof, because a standard condom doesn't fit a certain type of male who's well endowed. You have to prepare for that to make sure you have adequate condoms that fit you. See, it's all on the responsibility of the individuals if they choose to be responsible. And we know that people are not, because to err is human. But is it right? Because one point also made in this commentary by MSNBC is that where will it stop? Now, the judge says, well, we're just on the subject of abortion right now. But see, we know better. We know that all type of cases are going to come on the desk before you and the other magistrates, and it will be up to you all to decide the fate of those cases. So as he said in his commentary, well, today was abortions overturned. What about gay marriage? That just got on the books a little while ago. Who's to say somebody goes back in and say, well, I think it's wrong, it's unlawful, it's unnatural, same-sex people marrying each other. Go back. Race, same thing. I don't think a black man should be marrying a white woman, vice versa, Iranian marrying a Oriental. It's all the same. Because if you start with one, it's only a matter of time you'll be going, somebody else will be complaining and moaning about something else. And I agree. I would say gay marriage will be the next. What about adoption? Gay people adopting children. That was a subject I wanted to discuss. I've been wanting to discuss that for about 2 months. How do you all feel about homosexual people adopting children, playing house as couples, and raising children? It's a very interesting topic. May do that one later. I have a lot of things on my mind. There's cases I have not discussed. They're like months behind because of the other stuff that I talk about kind of got put on the front burner. But I do believe other cases will come before the Supreme Court and they will be challenged. And I do believe gay marriage will be the next one to be challenged. Why not? And if that's the case, let's go with same-sex surgeries. Many men, women have attempted to mimic the opposite sex, which you know is highly impossible because God made you the way you are, whether you believe in him or not. And I can't see how a woman could ever become a man. Let's keep that 100. She doesn't have the tools to shape her body into the male penis. But many men have attempted and have done so to try to look like a woman down in the private area. Lord have mercy. And some have regretted it because it didn't turn out the way they thought it would. But that's the point, because it's unnatural to be gnawing on private parts and trying to form them into something that they could never be. Never, ever be. So see, I do believe it's going to go on into other areas. Gay marriage, transgender surgeries. I believe it will be, these subject matters will come across the Supreme Court's desk in the near future. Why not? Because you know there are many people who do not believe in same-sex marriages. You're crying about somebody aborting a baby. You're crying about 2 men marrying, 2 women marrying. Just like somebody said in a joke once, a man and a woman can't get it right. How's 2 men going to get it right? That's true. Very true. Very, very true. A man and a woman can't get along. Can't make a marriage work, a relationship work. How the hell 2 men, 2 women going to make it work? No, it may seem to be a bad joke, but it's just the truth. People are people. People are people. No matter whatever your beliefs are, religious or philosophical, and or just your own personal opinion, you're entitled to your opinion about abortions here in the U.S. But I think it should be a woman's choice. That's my personal opinion. I think back to someone I knew many moons ago, a young lady that I was friends with had one done. And, you know, naturally she didn't feel great afterwards. And I think back to that now, discussing this here today. She later ended up having a child, boy child, just one. And child has grown up to be a very productive, successful young man. She never had any more children after that. But at that time, she did not want the baby by the guy she was dating. And naturally, I could see why. He already had a slew of children. So why add one more? But naturally, it was her choice to not take birth control. I didn't get in her personal business to ask why not this? It wasn't my business. You understand what I'm saying? But nonetheless, it was her choice. But the point is, after that abortion, she ended up getting pregnant by somebody else and had that child, gave birth to that child. So now women have been denied the choice to choose. How do you all feel about that? I know some of you may not feel it's right to have an abortion. Some of you may agree it's a woman's choice. And a man shouldn't be the one making the deciding factor of a woman's body. Let's talk about the issue of rape. I think it's common sense that a woman would not want to carry a child from their rapist. It doesn't matter who the rapist is. If it's a relative, a father, a stranger, why would a person want to carry a baby? And people still argue, well, it doesn't matter if she was raped by her father, brother, cousin, the neighbor, schoolmate. It's still a life, but it's a life that you don't have to be responsible for. See, that's the gist of the story. That's why it's easy to judge and say, well, I don't think this, I don't like this, I don't agree with this, but you're not the one carrying the torch. You're not the one that's going to raise the baby. You're not the one that's going to be responsible for the baby. So in that case of rape, that was a unwilling victim who says, I don't want the baby. So who am I to say she should carry it? Do I want her to have the baby and be miserable with a child she has to look at that looks like her predator, rapist? How are you going to explain to a child you are the product of a rape? See, you're not thinking about that because it's not affecting you personally. You're not the one that's going to have to explain to another human being how he or she came to be. You're just saying, well, it's my religion. My religion says thou shalt not kill. Yeah, we know that already. But the government passed it, and now it's been overturned 50-some years later. The doctor has found abnormalities in the womb. Believes the woman will have a child with some type of physical handicap. And the lady says, no, I don't want this baby. I don't want to deal with that. Should she be able to abort? Because 9 times out of 10, she might be way far along once she finds out the abnormalities of the child. And this becomes where the subject becomes dicey. When the child is far along into the womb, let's say 6-7 months, and the doctor starts to see some things that don't look proper, that could either affect the mother or the child. Now, the mother says, I don't want to have this baby. Okay? Physical abnormality. You understand what I'm saying? I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry. But you understand, she's been notified, ma'am, we see some things that don't look quite right. This is what we have assessed. Now she has to make a decision if she wants to carry the child to full term or abort a baby that's far along. Is it right for her to abort the child, knowing that the child will not be allegedly normal and or could cause her death, complications during childbirth, after the fact? See, a woman still can be judged because that's just a story. It's not your body. It's not a man's body. It's not a woman's body. Nobody's in her shoes. She's the one who has to carry the burden of now knowing that something's wrong with her child. And it can either affect the child when born and or the mother during childbirth. And am I supposed to judge her because she doesn't want this baby who she's got to take care of? That will be abnormal. Because in the end, we as citizens will not be around when these people have these children, period, no matter what's wrong with the baby. What complications the mother is having, if the mother's having healthcare issues, if they have to induce labor because the mother has healthcare issues, anything can happen. Case of rape. You're not the one carrying the child, and you're not going to be the one responsible for the livelihood of the child. So that's why it's easy to judge, because you're an outsider looking in. And as you know, many horrible things have happened to abortion clinics over the years, bombings, threats, things that's, once again, not your concern. You don't act out violence because you don't agree with somebody having a clinic to abort babies. Well, the government said it was okay to have the clinics and that it was legal to have an abortion, so why would you want to bomb it? See, you have unstable people out here, very unstable people. They don't mind doing things to harm others. Once again, you want to harm a clinic, but those people in there, they're just working their job they've been assigned to. They're not the ones having the abortion. But you feel like what? They're aiding in killing of a child. And it goes back to same adage. When is the fetus knowledgeable that they are alive, well, breathing, considered a human being? You're entitled to your opinion. It's very interesting information. Texas is a very strict state. Most of you know this. Death penalty, strict laws, Bible Belt. Men running the show. It's the way it is. Because that's how it's always been from day one. Man running the show about everything. Not just legalities of abortion, but many laws that have been put on the books were made by men. Just common sense. And men are not like women, and women are not like men. We don't think alike. We don't move the same. We don't walk the same. That's why a lot of laws that have been passed over the hundreds of years makes no sense. Some of you didn't even know that in the state of Georgia, it's against the law to have oral sex. You heard that in this commentary, that a lot of states such as Georgia, Alabama have very old, barbaric laws. But I do believe, sodomy was spoke of in the Bible. You cannot have oral sex in the state of Georgia. Many of you probably didn't know that. I learned that as a young girl watching the Phil Donahue show as a teenager. And I thought, what? Even though I didn't know much about sex then, but I could use my imagination. That's right. Can't put your mouth on other people's private parts. It's against the law. State of Georgia. How about that? So that's what I'm saying, is that when you start with one, there'll be something else tomorrow. And I got a feeling homosexuality will be the next case to hit the desk. Gay marriage will be up on the table. You can bet your bottom dollar. And I don't believe it will stop there. Because we have a lot of radical thinking people in this country, and it doesn't matter if I believe in same-sex marriage or not, but it was a hot topic at one time, and I see it going back on the desk. I do. And if Roe versus Wade has been overturned, I could see this hot topic being a choice as well. Also, surgeries with people wanting to change their sex, men wanting to be women. I definitely could see that being a ban on that. Hell no, no. No more doctors trying to assist you in becoming a woman. Okay? Why not? Why not? Is it unlawful to have an abortion, even though it was made law 50-something years ago? Was the government wrong then? Did they get it right now? Who all is going to conform? What states are going to have no abortions? Will women be seeking alternatives to getting an abortion? The abortion pill or the unsavory practice of letting someone go inside their private parts to try to disassemble a fetus, which is dangerous as hell. And even when women were doing it hundreds of years ago and before then, I could not imagine. I could not imagine. And you can die letting someone go in your private area to try to take out a fetus because she or he is not a doctor. And women were doing this, going in back rooms, buildings, alleys, letting people go into their private areas to try to take out a fetus. I'm sure many women have probably bled to death. Very dangerous, and I do not recommend this practice. So I'm going to say this to any woman out there who is in a state where it will not be legal to have an abortion. Best thing you do is use contraceptives. Find one that will be best suitable to you, for you. And if you have had several children or had as many children to your choosing and you are now ready to stop bearing children, I say have your tubes tied right after the last child you've given birth to. Don't wait. If you decided that this is the last, you're on number 3, number 4, number 6, whatever the number is, hell, number 1, it's your choice. Tie your tubes and be done with it. Or if you're in a relationship, ask your mate to get snipped. You all have a decent relationship, you're one in accord together. He doesn't want to make any more children, or he doesn't want children, however it goes. Talk to your mate, your male partner, and see if he will get snipped. That way, you don't have to worry about getting pregnant. And nobody has to be bringing in children that they do not want, because that is the worst case scenario for those who are against abortions. It is worse to bring a child here knowing the parent didn't want them. And it's easy to say, well, you shouldn't have got pregnant. It's easy to say, because I'm saying it. Anybody can say it, but it doesn't mean anything. People do what they want to do. I don't have to like it. Many people have had children they did not want to be a parent at that time. Maybe they didn't expect they were going to get pregnant. Maybe they hadn't gotten pregnant, so they didn't think, hey, I ain't going to use nothing. I ain't worried about it, which we know that's ignorant thinking, but it happens all the time. It's going to continue to happen until man and woman no longer exists. But I would not want anyone bringing a child here and he or she doesn't want the baby. You don't want someone raising a child and they don't want the child. So now you have a full baby breathing, but nobody wants the baby. This is where things go bump in the night, such as abuse and neglect. And that's the one thing some of you don't want to accept. Then you cry about that. Well, why you having? Oh, she's mean. He's mean to the baby. Oh, they're mistreating their children because they didn't want them. But you're crying about abortions. Now they got the kids. You're crying because they're being abused. See, it's a no-win situation. And I'm not saying that abortion should be used as a way of contraceptives, but people are entitled to how they navigate their bodies. I can't delegate what you should and shouldn't do with your body and how many abortions you should have. I think it's common sense. You know it's not a good idea to keep having abortions. one after the other, because it can cause complications to where you will not be able to bear children when you decide to have children. But once again, that is her choice. But the worst situation is having the children, a child, and you weren't ready to have a child. And now you're distant, you're cold, you're dumb, you're mistreating your children. Now we have a new problem of possibly the state getting involved because you're not doing your job right by your children. See, it's a no-win situation. So as I said, you're entitled to your opinion. If you believe abortions should be legal or not, morally. But in the end, it's not your business. It's not your life. You don't have to carry the child. You don't have to take care of the child. You don't have to live with the consequences, ramifications of having an abortion if something goes bump in the night during the procedure, because it's not you. You're not wearing the shoes. As I said, my best advice to any young person is to use protection. Best a woman uses contraceptives and condoms with her mate, hook up, whatever the situation may be, spouse, whichever. Because in the end, the burden really falls on the woman, because she's the one who has the capacity to hold the child. The man is just a sperm carrier. His job is over. Once the sperm is released, it's a wrap. He has no obligations until somebody looks for him with a sheet of paper saying, we need a DNA test. That's it. But the woman is the one who has to carry the child, be with child in the womb and thereafter. Usually the fathers, men, whomever, they're no-show. Not all, but some. So that's why I say, think about the choices that you make about your body. If you know you don't want to have children right now or down the road, then you take the necessary precautions not to get pregnant. Use birth control and or get your tubes tied, and you can have all the free sex you want unobligated. Same with a man. You know you don't want to be a father ever, then get snipped and you can have all the sex you like. Your choice. With whomever. Mercy me. What is next on the table for the Supreme Court? Because I got a feeling it's going to be something else. Very interesting situation. But that's my commentary today pertaining to Roe versus Wade. It has been overturned by the Supreme Court. And we will see what else jumps on the docket, because I got a funky feeling there'll be something else. And I got a feeling it's probably going to be gay marriage. I believe that will be next. I may do a video on that later this evening, because that's a topic I've been wanting to discuss. Not necessarily gay marriage, but I wanted to discuss gay couples, either married or together, basically adopting children. I'll just go there. Thank you, language. Thank you all so much. That's one of the topics I've been wanting to bring for a couple of months now. Should gay people adopt children? Gay couple, whether they're married or not, should they be able to adopt children? I think it's a very interesting topic. Well, we will discuss that maybe later this evening or no later than tomorrow. I have some Crime Vault videos I want to bring to you, because I'd like to go over the Chris Watts story. It's been kind of bothering me the past 24 hours, watching some documentaries pertaining to him. Just a very diabolical, just a wicked machine. And I want to chop that up. The Chris Watts story and Cheyenne and the children. Just the information is just unfathomable. You can't even wrap your head around what happened to the wife and kids. But I'm going to chop that up this week. And I have two other stories I want to bring to you. It's very, very interesting information. Once again, you're entitled to believe what you want. Believe in abortions, not believe in them. If you think that the courts made the appropriate decision, leave your comments. I will leave the comment section open under this video, and also to my community page. The audio that you heard, those videos are also posted on my community board. Feel free to leave a comment. how you feel about abortions and if it was right or wrong for this Roe versus Wade to be overturned. Please be respectful in your commentary. I want to thank you all for joining me. I don't really have much to go on and on about pertaining to abortions. I feel like it is a woman's right if she wants to have one. All I can say is I would be very careful in going in the later stages to abort the fetus when the baby's up in numbers. And that will probably be, 5 months up until the 9th month. Will be very dangerous to have an abortion, I would think, at the later stages. But I thank you all for joining me. If you'd like to donate to the channel, $McAngie, 129 Cash App. God bless all of you. Have a wonderful, blessed week. Very warm here in the high 10s, very humid. So you all stay cool and hydrated. I will be back with more stimulating conversation and topics. Please join me later or by tomorrow. I will have more information here on this network to discuss breaking news with you guys. Yeah, I understand that, Marge. Thank you all so much for joining me. Tracy came in a little late. But thank you all so much. Drop your comments below. Tell me what you think. But let me see something. I think I'm going to, before I check out of here, because I meant to do this earlier. On that MSNBC video I just played, there was some, naturally there's a comment box open. I'm going to read a few of those comments and I'm going to check out of here. This is by, let's see how to pronounce this. Eric Rule. I don't know. This was uploaded a day ago, this person's comment. Every judge who said under oath that they believe Roe versus Wade was settled law should be prosecuted for perjury. Interesting. Somebody says absolutely, here. And prosecuted under the full extent of the law and given jail time, says Tammy Johnson. G.E. Martin says, I'd settle for just impeachment and removal from the bench. Then somebody has something to say about Biden. According to Beijing, Biden, nothing is absolute, laugh out loud. The D says, I'm not crazy about this ruling. It's a very bitter pill to swallow, but believe that Roe versus Wade was settled law doesn't mean that it's actually a settled law, nor are they obligated to keep it that way. Believe is in no way a hard yes or no confirmation and is subject to change. Somebody else says, yep, thrown in jail or under it. Somebody responds to another commenter by saying, ironically, by this ruling, you may not have the Second Amendment right you think you have soon enough. There is nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to shoot a firearm, only that you can have one. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's read some more. What angers me about this ruling is that one of the greatest advocates for reversing Roe versus Wade is Clarence Thomas, a man who refused to recuse himself from a case before the South Carolina involving his wife, a clear violation of the rules of the court. Interesting. I don't know much about what they're talking about there. We need to stop referring to the Supreme Court as a court, says Beastie MK. We need to stop referring to people who were put on this court to legislate from the bench as justices. And it is long past the time for people to make it clear that the rulings are the result of a packed court, have no legitimacy. If these rulings came from a court with a good balance of ideologies and justices that receive strong bipartisan support, then I would still disagree with it, but would accept it as a result of a legitimate court, okay? If a decision is made about contraceptives, this is by Deb, maybe tack on Viagra to the ban. The less men that don't have the ability to perform, more women will be spared from dealing with an unwanted pregnancy. If they can ban condoms as well, watch the STI numbers go up as well. Wow, now that's something. So you want them to ban the little pill? Okay, so let's go here. This is the craziest comment I ever heard. If the woman is having sex with a man and he can't perform, you can best believe at some point she's going to stop messing with him, touching him, being his peripheral, and she'll go find another man who can perform. Did y'all hear that? Lord have mercy, I'm dead. CFPK says, the last few years in the U.S. is just sad, like watching the fall of the Roman Empire. Woo! They got 81 replies on that comment. Let's see what they got to say. This should be interesting. The rise of the conservative empire, says 5 Rings 16. The Wanderer says, perhaps something better can arise in its place. Somebody responds to Five Rings saying, you mean the revival, that's how USA started the Declaration, says God gave us these rights, the inalienable ones. Then Five Rings responds back to Tommy K. I'm very informed. You just are losing. Wow. Five Rings responds again to Tommy K. My side keeps winning, so we must be doing something right. Wow. Ooh. Getting hot-blooded here. Then John Michael responds to one of the other comments. God is not mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. Interesting. Whew. Then somebody else says, I said Declaration of Independence, you can't read. Woo! Then somebody responds, Miss Kathy Godfrey. This is funny. She said, Hitler thought he was winning too. Amen. I'm going to leave on that note. Yes, he did. And you see how that happened. You see what happened there. Because that's the point. Everything can't stay the same. Nothing stays the same. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much, honey. Yeah, I was going to take a quick drive today, do a little sightseeing. It's a great day to be out. It's a little cloudy out today. It rained this morning, but I think I'm going to step out for a minute. I think I might go visit Miss Louisa today. But I thank you all for following the content. Thank you for watching my posts. Please go to my community board. I've got some interesting posts up. I've got photos of the Queen out last night and a really nice Polaris car out. It's red and white, very fabulous car I saw last night when I stepped outside the lounge, and I thought, Lord have mercy, whose car is this? Oh, it was a beauty. Yes, it was. Indeed, it was. Very, very nice. Very nice. Swanky. Thank you all so much for following the content. If I don't discuss a certain subject matter on this network, I post various stories onto my community page just to keep you in the know of breaking news and situations and scenarios taking place in this country with true crime and various subject matters. Thank you so much for following me. Like, share, subscribe, pass the Queen's name around for stimulating conversation, content. Amen. You all be safe out there. I'll try to get back on later this evening. If not, yes, Margie, it is a beautiful car. If not this evening, I will be back tomorrow to bring you information. We're going to go back into the crime vault of older crimes that have taken place and a case that's already been resolved in a court of law. We're going to chop up the Chris Watts story because I want to revisit a very baffling, diabolical case of why this man killed his wife and children. At what point did he realize he no longer loved his wife and his children? Various storylines he gave during interrogation, which led me to believe he was never truthful. And even in the last version he gave months after being incarcerated does not mean it happened the way he said, because when you start lying, you have to continue to lie to cover the first lie. So therefore, how could I believe the last version he gave FBI pertaining to why he killed his wife and children and how it played out that morning? That's it. Was it the truth? Did he kill his wife and children because he fell in love with this woman from his job? Or had he already had thoughts of murder of his family before he met the woman? Was this woman the reason for killing these people? Because what you have to ask yourself is the obvious. People flirt with people every day. People admire people every day. People fall for people, become obsessed, whatever word you want to call it, but they do not murder their spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, whichsoever, or their children because they fell for somebody else while they were in a relationship. You already had to have had some deep-rooted, deep-seated illness in you. You were already detached from reality, civilians. You were already numb because murder should be the last thing on your mind because your relationship isn't working, number one. Number two, you fell out of love, like. Number three, somebody caught your eye. Number four, somebody fancied you. 5, you reciprocate it. No way in the world should it ever resort to murder. Just walk out. Many people have done it. In relationships and marriages, they have left their partner for somebody else or just walked out because they were tired or incompatible, whatever the situation was. But to murder your family for whatever reason is diabolical. And this is somebody who was numb already. As they have said in the documentary that I watched, he was playing a part, Chris Watts. He was mimicking what was expected of him. And that is what a narcissist, a sociopath does, is he or she mimics what is expected of them. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you all later. This is Everyday Shenanigans.